The Pope just came out in the most strong language yet, condemning this whole trans ideology and the notion that one is born in the wrong body and the medicalization of this. And for sure, the Catholic Church is not behind pronouns. So what? Now, my children who are about to be confirmed in the Catholic faith have to choose between their faith and what Joe Biden mandates through their teachers that comes out of their mouth. This guy who can't even put two sentences together now effectively tells my children and yours and all of ours exactly what to say around this issue. It's an outrage, but it is an affront to religious rights as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is an affront to an entire list of rights. And as I say, we always have all of the hysteria about authoritarianism, democracy dies in darkness, right? Here we have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats who are contradicting the Supreme Court on what Americans' constitutional rights are on a whole host of bases. And as you say, telling Americans what they can and cannot say in schools, in universities, about things that are obviously true, like the differences between the sexes. And this is done by unelected bureaucrats. This is not, Joe Biden is the figurehead of this administration. He doesn't have that power to unilaterally change civil rights law, to contradict the Supreme Court. But this is what this administration has gone ahead and done. And it's kind of up to us, whether through the courts or through the democratic process, to correct the administration and to make sure that this doesn't become American law.
It's making our children go along with a lie. That's any sort of compelled speech would be wrong. The government's not allowed to do that to us in America. It's not allowed to do that to us in America. But they're making these children now, and college age too, go along with a lie. They're going to have to say a man is a woman, is a she, and refer to him accordingly, and respond to them in the locker room and the bathrooms accordingly. They will be confronted with naked penises that only the autogynephiles will flaunt. Because as I say, true trans people don't want to flaunt a penis. Most of them don't even want the penis anymore. If you see a flaunter in the locker room, odds are it's an autogynephile, meaning it's a guy who gets off undressing in women's clothes. You want that next to your kid? You want that next to your daughter? While she's changing her clothes at age 14, you're going to get a whole lot more of it now. And now the government can make her look at him and say, she belongs here. It's stomach turning. It can't stand. We can get Congress to vote against it. We can get a new president to undo Title IX, just the same way Biden undid it when he took office. I mean, that's how this happened. He undid all the changes Trump put in place.
That's right. And, this is the sort of power that the administrative state now has in our and you mentioned Chevron, which is an important curtailment of that power. And I hope will be curtailed, not just in this instance, but across the board. But fundamentally, we have a good balance in the United States where women and men have the same constitutional rights, right? We do not have, different First Amendment rights, right? Different due process rights based on sex. We have federal law and all 50 states banning sex discrimination. But in each of those instances until now, our law has allowed for distinguishing between men and women when those sex differences are relevant, right? That's why we had prisons that were separated by male and female, why we had locker rooms in public schools that were separated by male and female, why we had sports teams separated by male and female, because of the common sense reality that physical sex differences matter in certain cases. Maybe it doesn't matter when it comes to who's going to be a chemist, right, in the employment context, but it sure as heck matters when actually on this show I could say sure as hell matters, right? It sure as hell matters when you're talking about sports or you're talking about little girls in a locker room, right? And you're talking about biologically male people with penises walking around in there. These are the things that our law until now could recognize that, yes, this is not an invidious discrimination. This is not trying to curtail the opportunities of women. In fact, this kind of, quote, discrimination on the basis of sex is necessary to protect the opportunities and the safety and the privacy of women. And these regulations blow all of that out of the water. It makes the law unable to distinguish between men and women, between boys and girls, in those obvious common sense contexts that we know are necessary, again, to protect even basic safety, let alone opportunity for women and girls.
Can we round back to the sports question? Because the Biden administration had considered including sports as part of this. And some in the LGBTQ community who are praising this, that tells you what you need to know. They're very pleased with this new revision, are saying, well, the one thing he didn't give us was the sports. And even the people who are supposed to be advocating for us, for women, like the National Women's Law Center, are raising this point against us in favor of the men. Listen to what these traitors said today. While we celebrate the significance of this moment, we are still, and I was waiting for them to say, like, we're still concerned about the safety of women, given that it's the National Women's Law Center. Nope. We are still urging a release of a final rule that explicitly clarifies what Title IX has always stood for and guarantees that transgender, non-binary, and intersex athletes have a right to play sports alongside their peers. No, so they're traitors. And I understand, and May and I talked about how this law, this it's not a law, it's an agency regulation, but it has the effect of law, will be, the way it's written, it will be exploited. The way it's written will be used to allow men into women's sports, for sure. Nothing needs to change in order for that to happen. But the Biden administration is saying that it doesn't. And the people who want men in women's sports are saying, gee, I'm sad, it doesn't. So how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, this is a political fig leaf for the Biden administration. I think they know that people look at the sports context. They watch the 200-meter butterfly. They watch, a man outstrip women in a very obvious and physical way. And they know that that's not a good issue for them because everyone with two eyes can see that men and women are different in that context and that it's totally unfair to the women involved who are competing against them. So what this is sort of a political fig leaf. They're saying, well, we're carving out sports. But as May said, everything they say in these 1,577 pages applies to sports, right? You can't just grant these rights on the basis of quote unquote gender identity, right? And then say, well, but we don't mean it in this context, right? On the plain reading of these regulations, it does apply to sports. But even so, right, these regulations explicitly apply to locker rooms. They explicitly apply to 1,000 other contexts in which it's totally inappropriate to have men coming in and invading women's spaces. So regardless, these regulations impact that on top of all of the due process issues, on top of the First Amendment issues, right? This really is a regulation that affects everybody who has anything to do with any educational institution that gets a dime of federal money. It's bad for men, it's bad for women, and it's bad for boys, and it's bad for girls. It's bad for everybody. But I think this is just a political ploy, basically, by the Biden administration. And we know that they have a compliant media outside of this show and others that will just go along with that and say, no, this doesn't apply to sports, even though schools pretty clearly will take this as applying to sports.
Are you passionate about protecting civil liberties like free speech? Well, I've got something special for you. You could consider opening a Donors Trust charitable giving account, a donor-advised fund designed specifically with your values in mind. Imagine being able to support causes that you actually care about, all while safeguarding the principles that matter most to you. Whether it's defending free speech, promoting limited government, or supporting individual rights, your contributions can make a difference. It's straightforward giving, so you can focus on what truly matters, making a positive impact. Your donations are securely managed, ensuring your hard-earned money goes exactly where you intend it to. Plus, with built-in safeguards, you can trust that your support is being used effectively and responsibly. So if you're ready to make a difference, go to donorstrust.org/MK today to download the ultimate survival guide to charitable giving. Learn more at donors, DONORS, trust.org/MK. donorstrust.org/MK to download the Donors Trust Giving Guide today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.